So we are getting physical now, I would say. Huh? Now let me introduce you the next panel, which is about fintech and sustainability and why both of them should go together. On the panel we have Bert Boerman, who is the CEO of governance.com, there, and Gert Rautenberg, Managing Director of Global Fund Analytics. So, both of you have a mic. I suppose it's just working.
I presume so, yeah.
Yes, okay. So, well, we heard already a lot this morning about fintech's importance of fintech. My view was, and it still is, that the financial sector still has a big need in regards to technology to get more efficient, because that's what Mr. Marx also said, that it's about well, being profitable. Now with sustainable finance, we see that there are a lot of new regulations coming up, and a lot of new questions that are there. Different countries do different things. The EU has its financial action plan. Luxembourg has his own plan as well. Well, it's probably a bit similar. But my question is, how do you see that? This must be opportunities for the tech environment, for the tech actors, fintech, regtech, and so on. So how do you see it? Is the sector feeling it?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tom, for hosting this panel. I think the previous panel probably gave an excellent introduction, I think, to what we're discussing now, highlighting the importance of data, but we'll probably get to that later on in the discussion. I think when looking at the challenges around sustainability regulation, fintech can actually bring what I think are existing solutions to new problems, if you like. So we have, we talked about the challenges of data collection, data analysis, which I think is key in mastering the topic in the long term. And we have existing examples where fund managers, asset managers are confronted with exercising what I think is good oversight, good control of, for example, distribution networks, other relationships that they have with their counterparties. Thinking of CSSF regulation 18698, for example, which is requiring asset managers to exercise this oversight. I think, being compliant with ESG regulations is not all that much different from a technology perspective. And for ourselves, I can definitely confirm to you that, for example, our clients are leveraging existing solutions for, let's say, different scenarios to be applied in ensuring compliance with ESG regulations. But happy to provide some more examples later on. I think I'll leave it at that for now.
So you see, in fact, that Gert is coming more from the data analytics side, and Bert is coming, well, is more in the process management side. So how do you see it? Because it must become very complex. It's what Gert said. ESG should not be the big question, but how to treat it, how to manage. How do you see that?
Does that work? Yeah. It's massively complex, obviously. Process automation is not possible without data first. So there's a lot of data aggregation that we will certainly talk about. Technology is needed to solve this problem. And what we see, if you look at the fintechs that are addressing this, I essentially see two types of companies that are addressing this. So there are the fintech companies that are directly involved in sustainable finance initiatives. So you have OCO, for example, in Luxembourg, and you have F4A. So they all address different topics, but they are directly involved. And then you have the fintech companies that are trying to help the industry, the financial sector, to deal with this problem. And to be honest, there I see much less traction than on the direct initiatives. There's a lot of everybody's speaking about these topics. There's a lot of interest. The problem is that I see a lot of companies still kicking the can down the road because everybody knows that it's so complex. Everybody knows, everybody's worried about how they're going to deal with it. So they take the same approach as we see with every major regulatory implementation, is to say, let's let the other guys move first, and then we'll make a move ourselves. And that's a little bit the problem that we see here, is that there are tech companies. We were in a position years back where we were doing digital governance and process automation, but the market wasn't ready for us yet. So as a tech company, if you try to offer solutions and the market isn't taking it, then you lose a lot of time waiting for the industry to get ready. And I think we're not yet at that tipping point.
So we are a bit, as I always say, in a situation like with GDPR, we only get ready after it was implemented. And here as well, what you're saying is that it's not clear, it's too complex at the moment. The actors are not moving. That's my understanding. So
GDPR is an interesting analogy because you're absolutely right. It was the same thing. Everybody waited until the last moment or after the last moment to move anything, and the way that it was implemented by most people is very superficially. So it didn't really drive any change. I don't think people really care more about data privacy now that they did before, but you still have to click away 15 cookies on every website, and I have to write a signature on my dentist appointment that my GDPR data is stored. But they don't know where it goes. And so we want to avoid that this becomes a superficial exercise. And that is, for me, is the big risk that we have here.
Coming back to the data, so that has to be stored or that has to be used to do reportings and so on. So Gert, we talked also about something that is very often said is if you have garbage data, you put it in, then it's garbage data coming out. You were not, if I remember well, not that okay with this approach.
Well, I think it's, I think people generally, hope I'm not stepping on anybody's feet, but simplicity is sometimes an easy concept. Yeah? And yes, I think obviously, I think bad data will not give you good results. And you're referring to, I think, my view that that's all good and fair, but I think, as was said previously, there actually is quite a lot of data, and I wouldn't always emphasize the perfection of data. I think sometimes you can actually work with 80-90% of what I would call pretty useful data without trying to achieve 100% perfection. And then I think it's more about the process, and maybe building a little bit on what Bert said earlier. The real challenge in implementing this is about outcomes. You mentioned GDPR. We don't want to end up in that space. And I think it comes down to how internal organizations are able to process these initiatives. And there, I would say that again, coming back to the topic of this panel, how can fintech help? I think the larger organizations are struggling with this diversity of regulation, which you mentioned, Tom. You said there's a lot of different ones, people finding it hard to orientate themselves. I think sometimes maybe working with a dedicated team, wouldn't say outside team because we want to partner with our clients, but that can allow you to leverage efficiency. It can avoid internal, what I would call maybe procrastination sometimes. We've seen that in other spaces as well. And I think the really big impact it can make is winning what I would call time to market. You usually use that phrase when you're talking about new products, but here I think being compliant with something that is increasingly important to all of us. If you don't mind, I'd like to compare it to achieving short time to market with what we're trying to do here. And in that sense, I think smaller organizations can sometimes be more effective, quicker, and that way maybe can support and be complementary to internal, let's say, initiatives.
Bert, well, we have, as I said before, there will be a lot of new regulations. There will be a taxonomy that will be written, which is quite large, so nothing very precise, well, at least. These are some critics about that. So that must be difficult for management of companies to follow their strategy. And how do you see that? You are also quite critical in that view that it's too, well, for the complexity, and it's too vague to follow up.
Yeah, both the complexity and the vagueness have potentially the outcome that you are going to do things that don't make any real impact. So that is a big problem. I think it's so complex. I mean, the taxonomy has been described, and then we got the taxonomy paper, which was hundreds of pages, which I don't think a lot of people will take really in-depth look at. Then we got tools, Excel tools, where you can screen different industry codes against different type of ratings. But still people don't know how to use it and how to really make sense of that. So that complexity is very difficult. And what I fear is that you're going to get a lot of companies are trying to figure it out by themselves. And so for example, an asset management company, unless you're really, really a big player, but for most asset management companies it will not be possible to analyze that. I mean, just you open the tool of the taxonomy, and you go to, I think, the 5th or the 6th step, and it says, please also consult these 25 other regulations. So that if you do that by yourself, I don't think you get through it. So I think a combination will be, you need technology for that, because it's data, and then like Gert said, useful data is already better than no data at all. But then what do you do with that data? How do you aggregate that up? How do you make that part of your operational process? And in order to get there, I think the asset management industry, the advisory industry, and the technology companies need to work together. Technology companies cannot fix this by themselves. We don't have the regulatory expertise. The advisors cannot fix it because they don't have technology to deal with it, and the asset management company have other things to do as well on a day-to-day basis.
And if I may just add, I think Bert touches on an important point which we've seen in other scenarios as well. The sharing of technology, whether it's platform or whether it's applications, can actually be a very useful thing. I think organizations sometimes approach this from a point of view where, of course, they have a specific problem, and we're working with different clients who have different levels of let's say, progress in implementing, for example, ESG strategies into their product strategies, but some are quite advanced. But it's not really the technology that is differentiating them. Yeah. So you were talking about to what extent is this also used as a sales argument? We are building this into our product suite, and that makes sense. But it's not going to be how you analyze the data or how you report on it or how you present it that is really going to be the big differentiator. And I think they're using platforms and facilities that enable you to collaborate in terms of implementation. That's not going to take anything away from you in terms of positioning yourself independently as a product provider. But I think it offers a lot of advantages in terms of speeding up the implementation and being more effective.
So listening to you, or to both of you, in fact, I understand that, well, probably sustainable finance will not go without Fintech. And, well, the good news I heard, if I understood it right, is that there will be some funding opportunities from the government, if that was, at least that was my understanding. So, but are the needs clear for the tech and companies? What are their needs, and does the tech center need support? The sector, need support to respond to these upcoming challenges?
I think for most people, the tech companies, the industry incumbents, and even the advisor, it's not clear yet. Like you said, it's very high level, and how you then fill it in makes the actual impact. I think there's a lot of things that still need to be determined. I mean, that will be a road that we have to walk all together in the next 12 months. I think we can only figure that out together. what is clear is that there are tools to solve a lot of these issues. I mean, data aggregation tools, the process automation tools, data visualization tools, due diligence questionnaire tools. The thing is, how do you connect this now smartly together? And I think there we really need to see that collaboration that I just said, but between the three players, I think is really key to figure that out.
Yeah, I would not disagree with that. I think that summarizes pretty well. I'm not sure there's more support needed in terms of funding or other let's say measures. I think Luxembourg has done, I think, a very good job, certainly by comparison to other areas where I think quite a lot of support is being provided. If I may, I'd like to also touch on what Claude Marx referred to in his speech this morning, the current environment. I think it was a heavy topic that overlaid everything. And you mentioned being digitally enabled as a key thing. And I think this for us is also, we talk about how quickly we can implement this. We talk about internal procrastination sometimes. But we're all realizing that this industry, the finance industry, is going to, at least to some extent, be moving to a more remote working environment as well. Yeah, so not at 100% level, but I think that it's fair to say that a certain percentage will be looking to position itself in a remote working environment, and I think today's technology allows that. So again, not sure I'm answering to your question 100% here, but what does the industry need? What do we need? I think is an openness to also enable those concepts. Because I think there's a hell of a lot that can actually be achieved. We think, Bert, you do the same thing. We enable our clients to fully work remotely. It was mentioned this morning that in a matter of days or hours, sometimes we were able to switch to remote working environments in the middle of March, beginning of March, and there's an opportunity here. I think as we try to realize these things, I think the technology is there. And maybe to answer your question more specifically, I think maybe we just need to make those concepts more known, and if any support is required, then maybe highlight what is possible a bit more. Yeah, I think support is generally there, but maybe it's also, I think, venues like this that would allow us to do that. So.
Yeah, I think also with the situation we were living with COVID and everybody having homework to be done, and we realized that it worked. Before the end, companies did not want to do that because they said, well, it will not work. So we now see that, and also I think that what you were saying about the partnerships is very interesting, because that's certainly, in my point of view, an opportunity to not only startups, fintech, small entities, but in general, companies that could work together. I think we unfortunately came again to an end. Is there a question?
Yeah, there is a question. Yes, so it's a question from outside this room. It's from Mrs. Svetlana Grishankova. I hope I pronounced well the name. So the question is, many smaller companies, for example, asset management companies, are struggling with ESG analysis, and data and services solutions are very focused now on leading ESG data providers. There is domination worse than big three in credit ratings. Do you see risks associated with this?
And just to understand, the risk with the data quality there, or?
I think there should be. So do you think that there are risks associated with this ESG analysis and data service solution that are focused on ESG data providers?
Well, for my part, I would probably come back to what I said earlier about data quality in general. I think certainly we are, still at the beginning stage. Regulation has taken about 2 years at the EU level to be finalized. So we are if you like, at the beginning stages of building up what I think is a more mature, database that is also targeted towards ESG analysis, if you like. So I think there's a lot of data out there today that will probably fit into that mold. which is today also used for other things. So I think the fund managers that were referred to will have to design their set of requirements, and then I think the quality of the data that will feed into those requirements will also improve over time. So yes, I think there is certainly a risk, but again, I think thinking back to other examples, the opportunity here is not to get stopped or bogged down by the fact that the data quality is maybe not 100%, but it will improve. So I think the industry should have some faith and get started and work with what is available. Mr. Marx, I hope you don't disagree. I think the CSSF sometimes wants to see also that efforts are being made, sometimes maybe not achieving a perfect result, but at least doing something to get to that result. So I would maybe not overemphasize that risk, but rather in a way I'd make an effort to get started and work with what is there. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you. On behalf of Svetlana, thanks so much.
So thank you to the panelists. It was short, but
thank you, Tom.
That's how it is. And thank you very much for having been here.
Thank you for